The night is dark, darlings. The moon is hiding behind clouds. You're home alone, wrapped in a cozy blanket. The house settles. The wind whispers outside your window. Then, it happens. A shrill electronic scream, the telephone. Your heart jumps, texts, DMs. Our first story takes us to a quiet suburban home in September of 2008. A man named Charles Peck was on his way home from a job interview. He was a passenger on the Metrolink 111 train, excited about a potential new beginning. But that train would never reach its destination. It was involved in a horrific collision in Chatsworth, California, one of the deadliest in the state's history. His family waited, their hearts heavy with dread. They called his phone again and again, hoping for any sign he was alive. For hours, every call went straight to his voicemail, a cold, automated response that offered no hope. Then, something unbelievable happened. In the hours following the crash, Charles Peck's phone started calling his loved ones. His son, his brother, his sister, his stepmother, his fiancée. Each time they answered, they were met with nothing but static, a hollow, empty hiss from the other side. They would shout his name into the receiver. "Charles, are you there? Can you hear us?" But no voice ever answered. The calls kept coming, one after another, for hours. Picture this. It's the late 1980s, long before caller ID was a household thing. A teenage girl, let's call her Lisa, is babysitting for a family in a secluded house at the end of a long, dark lane. The two small children are tucked safely in their beds upstairs. Lisa is watching a movie, feeling a little spooked by the creaks and groans of the old house. The phone rings. She answers it with a cheerful, "Hello?" There's no one there, just dead air. She hangs up thinking it's just a prankster or a wrong number. The phone rings a third time. This time, she hears something, a faint, raspy whisper. "Have you checked the children?" Lisa's blood runs cold. She slams the phone down, her hands shaking. She locks the front door and peeks through the curtains, but sees nothing but her own terrified reflection. Now, in a full-blown panic, Lisa calls the police. The officer says they can trace the call. Keep him on the line for at least a minute. A few moments later, the man calls back. Lisa forces herself to talk to him, trying to stretch the conversation.
The police officer calls back. "The calls are coming from inside the house. They're coming from the upstairs extension."
How could the man be calling from inside the house he was asking her to check? In 2008, a man named Jules, a paranormal investigator, was working on a case at a supposedly haunted location in England. He was with a small team documenting strange occurrences. His cell phone, a simple model with no internet, was off and tucked away in his bag. Suddenly, his home phone, miles away, rang. His wife answered. The caller ID was strange, a long string of symbols and numbers that made no sense. She could barely make out what he was saying through the crackling static. It was Jules. He spoke in a strange, detached tone, describing the very room he was in. The wallpaper, the furniture, a strange cold spot. His wife kept asking what was wrong, why he was calling, but the voice continued its descriptive monologue without acknowledging her questions. When Jules finally returned, he swore he had never made the call. His phone had been turned off. The call log was empty. The details he described were exactly what he had been observing and noting in his journal at the precise moment his wife received the call. How could his voice have been transmitted from his mind, through time and space, to his home phone miles away? This chilling tale comes from the world of taxi drivers, those unsung guardians of the night. One foggy evening in the 1990s, a veteran cabbie named Frank was cruising through the quiet streets. He pulled up to an old, dilapidated apartment building. A woman bundled in a heavy coat got in. She gave him an address across town. The address was for a cemetery. As they drove, Frank started to feel an intense, unnatural cold seep into the car. He cranked up the heat, but it did nothing. He glanced in the mirror again. The woman was still there, motionless. Then, at the gates, the back seat was empty. Shaken, Frank radioed his dispatcher. The dispatcher sounded confused. "You canceled that fare 20 minutes ago." How could he have been driving a ghost, and how could his own voice have reported a cancellation he never made? He had no explanation. The memory stayed with him. A passenger who never paid a fare, a voice that canceled a trip that had occurred. Some rides never end. In the early 2000s, a young couple, Mark and Sarah, bought their first home. It was an old farmhouse, charming and rustic, but it needed a lot of work. They installed a new phone line. A few days later, they started receiving strange calls. The calls always came late at night, When they answered, faint sounds of children playing came through. Muffled giggling, small feet running on wooden floors, a child's voice humming an eerie nursery rhyme. Mark and Sarah didn't have any children. Their nearest neighbors were miles away and also childless. One night, Sarah answered and spoke instead of just listening. "Who is this?" she asked, trembling. The giggling stopped. A long, chilling pause. Then a tiny, clear voice whispered, "Can you come play with us?" Sarah dropped the phone as if it had burned her. She was terrified. Desperate for answers, Mark researched the house's history. What he found made his blood run cold. Nearly a century earlier, 2 young children had died during a harsh winter, found in the upstairs playroom, the same room Mark and Sarah used for storage. This next story is about a man named David, who was working late one night in his office building. His desk phone rang, startling him in the quiet office. It displayed his own number. He frowned, thinking it was a glitch.
He answered. It was his own voice, panicked, breathless, terrified. "Don't leave the office," it said. "He's in the parking garage. He's waiting for you."
He was frozen in his chair, the silent phone pressed to his ear. He called building security. A skeptical guard agreed to check the parking garage. A few minutes later, the guard called back. He'd found a man hiding between cars, armed with a knife. How could a call from himself, from his own number, have warned him of a danger he was seconds away from walking into? He thought about the garage, a vast concrete maze. The warning felt too real to ignore. Science couldn't explain it. Logic offered no comfort. He had been saved by a voice that sounded like his own. In 1994, a woman named Ruth was at home in her small apartment. Her husband, Gary, was a pilot on a flight scheduled to land that evening. Ruth was anxious as he flew. The phone rang. She snatched it up, hoping it was Gary. The voice on the other end was garbled and faint, buried under a sea of static. Through the chaos, she could just make out Gary's voice. "Problem. Engine." The line erupted with loud bangs and high-pitched whining. She could hear screams, chaos, and terror. Ruth screamed his name into the phone as the connection worsened. The last clear thing she heard was his voice, strained and full of fear, saying, "I love you." Then the line went dead. She collapsed, consumed by grief. She called the airline. The rep said there were no reported problems. The flight was on schedule and preparing for final approach. An hour later, the phone rang. It was Gary. He had landed safely and called from the terminal. How could Ruth have received a call from an alternate reality, a timeline where her husband's plane had crashed? She refused to believe it, but the memory haunted her. The line is dead. The stories are over. But the feeling, that little shiver running down your spine, lingers, doesn't it? They are glitches in the fabric of our reality, whispers from places we are not meant to understand. A telephone is a simple device. It's designed to connect one person to another across a distance. But what happens when that distance is not measured in miles, but in years? What happens when the person on the other end of the line is no longer breathing? Or perhaps was never there at all? Science and logic are wonderful things. They can explain weather, planets, the human body, but they cannot explain a dead man's phone calling his grieving family. They cannot explain a warning from your own voice moments before a deadly attack. These mysteries remain unsolved. The families were left with questions that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. There is only the chilling memory of a voice on the line and the cold, hard fact that something impossible occurred. It's a terrifying thought that the barrier between our world and whatever lies beyond is as thin as a telephone wire. So the next time you hear that familiar ring in the dead of night, pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. Remember these stories. Pleasant dreams, darlings.